Hi, and welcome to City at a Glance. I'm your host, David Young, and with us, as always, is our city manager, Darin David. Darin, thank you for being here today.
Thanks, David.
Today we're going to talk about a very important issue called Keep Fort Collins Great, or KFCG, a voter-approved tax initiative that will be sunsetting in 2020. With us today to help talk about that, we have Dean Klinger with the Planning, Development, and Transportation Department. Dean, thank you for being here.
Thank you, David.
We also have Ginny Sawyer with the City Manager's Office. Ginny, thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you.
Also joining us today is Ann Turnquist with the Poudre Fire Authority, or PFA. Ann, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, David.
So to kick things off, for anybody who's not familiar with KFCG, Darin, would you just kind of mind providing a bit of an overview or outline of what this tax is and what it contributes to here in Fort Collins?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, David, and thanks again for a very relevant, great topic. You know, I love the name, Keep Fort Collins Great. This measure that was put in place by the voters at a very substantial level back a number of years ago, back in 2010. Actually, the tax started in 2010, was during a time where we were in really tough shape. We were looking at reducing services and basic services like fire and police and streets and things like that. And we're going to talk a lot about that today, but this has really become a critical part of our ability to deliver great world-class municipal services. So, I guess as I think back, David, back to 2008 and 9 and when we were having these conversations, it was really from the community up. It was the community saying, before you made these reductions in services, please come to us and talk to us and have a dialogue about what services we want to keep, or what are there alternative funding sources for that? And sure enough, there were, and we did not reduce services. We have become extremely reliant on these dollars. You'll hear about that today. I think that whether it's Poudre Fire Authority or police services or streets, there's some really basic services that are being provided as a result of the support that our local residents showed us a number of years ago. And then there are some critical services that we've all become reliant on. There are quality of life kinds of things. There, and again, I think Jenny's going to talk a little bit about those. But I'm, as I reflect back on that process, I'm so grateful for the conversation and the outcome, obviously, and then our ability to really deliver on what we promised to the taxpayers that we said we would deliver over those years. And I think, as we've reported every year, how we've spent those dollars, what some of the outcomes have been, and then also what we've done concurrently to make sure that local government stays efficient, that our city government is still, while we were given these dollars by our taxpayers, how do we pay attention to the efficiency of these services? Mm-hmm. And we reported on that every year as well. So as we come into the conversation, David, what I'm most excited about is truly the conversation with the community. And I will say for Ann and Ginny and Dean, and Jenny, you in particular, you've been such a big part of this. And I know you've even been out in the community already talking to community members and community leaders. And you've also spoken with City Council several times. And I can't think of a person who's better suited to have this dialogue with the community than you. And I mean that. I'm grateful for just the commitment that you've had throughout your entire career at the city around good, effective dialogue. So I think we're in great hands as we move forward in this conversation.
We're definitely queuing it up, and there is interest, and I'll just echo what you said, that the dialogue is as important as an outcome. And I would also encourage people to attend. Some of these meetings will be running all the way through October and certainly beyond, but it's great to hear what people love about this community, how they want to pay for services, and the kinds of services that they tend to prioritize.
Yep.
So with that in mind, maybe dig in a little bit deeper to some of the details. Dean, do you mind kicking us off with PDT and what you see with KFCG there? I'm sure there's things that people are benefiting from in the community that they're not even aware of that's funded by KFCG.
Sure, absolutely, David. I think in transportation in general, the tax is just critical to the services that we deliver. And so a lot of folks may not know some of the kind of inner workings of the tax, but about half of the tax in the ballot is dedicated to transportation. So there's 33% that goes to street maintenance and another 17% that goes to other priorities. So that street maintenance piece is about half the street maintenance budget. That just is just absolutely critical to maintaining the condition of the streets in Fort Collins. We've looked back and said, you know, if we didn't have this tax in place over this time, what would have happened to our streets? And we can kind of graph that condition dropping into a lower level of service. That's something that everyone would notice driving around in their cars, whether those the concrete is repaired in their neighborhood, all of those things that affect everyone every day. It's that other piece, I'll say, the other transportation that really may be places where people don't realize as much. Over the course of the tax, the city's been able to prioritize that for the needs in our budgeting process every year. And so there are just some really critical services in those other pieces. One of the big ones, when I look back and see, we've operated a good portion of our MAX, our BRT system there. Over the years, we've provided other parts of the transit system there. Our bridge program is a piece that's really good to emphasize. So we've replaced at least partially funded 14 bridge replacements over the course of the tax. So those are just a couple examples, but I think any way that you move around Fort Collins from a transportation point of view, the tax has probably impacted one of those services.
So David, one thing I'd add, for anyone who travels outside of Fort Collins, and even in other communities within Colorado, or especially if you go out of state and see what other communities, all you need to do is drive around just a few miles, and quickly you realize the condition of the asphalt, the streets in our community, as opposed to other communities. It's night and day difference.
Yeah.
I mean, our streets are rated very, very well from a surface quality standpoint and a maintenance standpoint, and this Keep Fort Collins Great tax is a really, really critical part of ensuring that we have, you know, safe, comfortable, reliable services. And it's not only for cars, it's for bicyclists as well. So that surface matters a lot to us.
And I would extend it to sidewalks.
Right.
A lot of our
Right.
sidewalk
That's right.
stuff is happening there, including a lot of our accessibility issue and trying to make more intersections ADA accessible.
No, those are great points, and I'm glad you brought them up. I think, you know, we have a complete streets philosophy, so when we talk about street maintenance, some people think maybe we're just talking about cars, but we're talking about however you might move, and in general, that's our transit system, that's pedestrians, that may be people with disabilities, that's people on bikes. And again, the condition of that infrastructure affects all of those people, however they're moving around. So thanks for bringing that part
What
up.
I've learned from Dean and Larry Schneider and others over the many years that I've been with the city is it's a lot, the way I look at it is a lot like repairing a roof on your home. That if you have a shingle or an area that might be bad, let's go do some early maintenance on that. And if we do, maybe we don't have to rebuild the entire or redo the entire roof. Or furthermore, if it gets really bad, we might have to do some damage that's been caused in our home and in the structure. And I think that the approach that you and your colleagues have taken is that let's do preventative maintenance so we don't have to come in and reconstruct the entire street. Now, we do reconstruction, we know that, but I think that the preventative side of things that you and Larry and team are doing on a regular basis, what it's doing is it's saving future expenses. Would you agree with that?
I would agree 100%. I think you stated that very well. You know, in pavement maintenance in general, what we'll say is the right pavement treatment at the right time. And again, what you're talking about there, as you said, Darin, is trying to inject that maintenance into the pavement before it's gone too far. And so one way you can do it, it's not just pay now or pay later, but it's pay now or pay more later. So you're really trying to get do that asset management and optimize that pavement treatment so that you're doing those treatments at the right time. Really the best way to look at that is a good investment. It's going to pay dividends over time.
Yeah, that multimodal transportation is very invaluable and something you don't really realize you take for granted until you hit those potholes, right? So, yeah, definitely. Thanks, Dean. And how about fire? Everybody loves firefighters. Tell us a little bit about what we get with KFCG for PFA.
You bet. This is a really important piece of the funding for Poudre Fire Authority and our firefighters. It's part of our whole public safety component for the city. So PFA gets about 11% of the funds from KFCG. Police gets about a little bit more than that. But those are such core services to a city, any city. And paying for those and transportation needs are really essential and core services to our community. And so with that 11% of the total of KFCG, that makes up about 10% of our total budget, which is a really significant piece of our pie. And what we've been doing with those funds is that we've been primarily spending them on people and hiring firefighters and uniformed staff, which makes a lot of sense because we're in a service business. We're 86% of our budget is people, personnel costs. And so this is a really, really critical piece of that. We have calculated that we have about 12 firefighting positions out of this money, which when you think about it, if we have 3 people at a station on 3 shifts, that's 9 people. To staff one station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. And so we've got more than a full station worth of staff coming out of this. And so what difference does that make to you as a person in the community? That translates into response times. As I'm sure everybody knows, Fort Collins is growing, and with that growth comes increased call volumes for fire calls, emergency medical calls, rescues, car crashes, all of those kinds of things. And the growth curve on that is just been exponential. Last year, PFA has responded to over 22,000 calls a year, and that number just grows every single year. And so if we didn't have this KFCG money, we would for sure not have one station that we have. And none of us want to think about which station that would have to be, because that means response times to not only just that area, but to everybody in the system, as all the stations have to fill in those spots. So that's really what the biggest thing that KFCG means to us. We've also been able to keep our equipment updated, our fire engines, our self-contained breathing apparatus, the SCBA that every firefighter has when they go into a fire scene. That these funds have helped us keep that equipment up to date, keep our firefighters safe. So KFCG has been really important to us. It's been important to police services, who are our really close partners in providing public safety to this community. And maybe Darin can talk a little bit more about that as well. Definitely. But for us, it's about core services and transportation, police, fire, and those services being supported by KFCG are so critical to our community.
Definitely, yeah. Darin, do you want to elaborate a little bit on the police services?
I do want to say first, though, as Ann was talking, what I was thinking about is how fortunate this community is to have Poudre Fire Authority. It's not a city department, it's a separate authority, but the city has an active role to play with the Poudre Fire Authority. And I think, I've had an inside view of that, and the fact that, you've recently reached accreditation and the results and the needles are moving in such a positive direction in Poudre Fire Authority. And so, Ann, you and Chief Dement, who had a meeting with this morning, we're very fortunate to have the Poudre Fire Authority and the staff. I like to think that not only, David, do people love firefighters, they love city employees too. We can't just, right, Ginny? Come on. But I think, Ann spoke about police services, and I'll just say that we've become very reliant on this for funding police officers and doing some of the things that not only providing basic services, but some of the enhancements that we've seen around community policing and other areas that we couldn't do without this. So it is very important. But Ann, I think this isn't about this. This is This is about investing in I think an organization as it relates to fire, and also, frankly, the city continuing investing in a great thing. And by the way, this, and I suspect maybe Ginny will talk about this. the city council is going to go out with Ginny's help and others, go out and engage the community in what you'd like to see.
Right.
And we'll come back, and I think the city council will likely hear lots of great feedback. Some people might say, discontinue it. We want it to go away. There might be some people that say, keep it exactly as is and come in and ask us just to renew that. Or maybe with some of the basic services, can we look at moving those to a different, more sustainable, ongoing approach and not come back every 6 to 10 years. So we don't really know what that's going to look like. But Ann, when you were talking, I was just thinking about, again, Poudre Fire Authority. What I believe, and the data shows us, is that the residents of this community have a very high level support of their local government. I think that's going to serve us very well. And again, when we make a promise, we deliver on those promises. We have a great partner in PFA.
It is a great partnership. And, from having been around the city of Fort Collins for
Right.
30 years now, which is crazy to me, we've had so much trust from the community. It's been amazing. The city has, and Poudre Fire Authority. And I think a lot of that comes from when we have these ballot measures that say, here's how much it is, here's how much money it is, and here's what we're going to give you. And we give them that. And we go back and tell them, here's what we told you we'd give you, and here it is. And that transparency and that trust will serve us well in the future as well. And I think that's part of those high ratings that you were just talking about, is that that we, in a very transparent way, say, here's what we want to buy. Is that what you want us to buy? And the voters have said yes. And then we deliver on that. And that trust is it's an amazing thing, and we have to guard it, and we have to keep showing the community that we're going to come out and continue to ask them, as Ginny's doing now with the Keep Fort Collins Great Outreach, is asking for that input and then delivering on those services.
So, yeah, with that in mind, Ginny, with this expiring in 2020 or sunsetting, what might the future hold? Can you speak a little bit to those conversations that you're having with the community and some options looking forward?
I'll speak to how invested our citizens are in this community and how knowledgeable they are and how interested they are. And so it's great because I am super deep into as many data points as we can possibly provide, again, to show accountability and to help people make a good decision. And so just for a few things to think about, Ann, you talked about PFA having people, and we know over 30 police staff and officers are funded through KFCG. We would be responding to the same number of calls with fewer people. And if we look at our population growth over time and the growth of both PFA employees, police services employees, and city employees as a whole, we've grown proportionally. So we still are PFA is running at about 1 per 1,000 in the community, and city employees as a whole are about 8.5. And we haven't changed in 10 years. So we're not growing, we're continuing to provide that level of service that we like to see. When we talk about our tax measures, here's what we want to do, we'll provide this, we get to come back. What we're starting to see now is, it's, as you mentioned, Darin, it's really the operation and maintenance of these things that we are continuing to building that we need to provide. Not everyone may know this, but our base rate, the ongoing tax that we don't necessarily go back and ask year after year, that hasn't changed in 36 years. And so it's awesome that we've been able to keep that the same. But as Darin alluded to, maybe we take a look and start saying, do we want to take police, fire, and street maintenance and some of these services and add that into our base rate so that we're not coming back as frequently for that, and that we're maybe leveling that out for current day. So an option could be going into the base rate. An option, as Darin mentioned, could be renewal, same or different services. An option could be going away or a reduction. Community definitely wants to know, what would go away. And that's a harder conversation and that's why we want to figure this out in 2019, so when we do a next budget cycle in 2020, we know how much revenue we have to work with. We're not having to guess and decide then. And then it really does become a public and a council choice and conversation in that budget.
And what we don't want to do, and I think we got feedback back in 2008 and 9 when we were having this conversation, is we also don't want to threaten people.
Yeah.
We want to be very transparent about what gets reduced, and we'll do that again, I think, as we go through this process. That then becomes a conscious, deliberate choice on the part of the voters. There's just a lot of options, and so Jenny, real quickly, that time frame. What's the time frame that ultimately it expires in 2020, December 31st.
Expires at the end of 2020. We would like to again have a voter determination in 2019. Right now we have two options there, April or November. Right now we're focusing on April. I think we've heard council direction to shoot for that. So by doing that, we will need to form a ballot measure by early February would be our deadline for that. So a lot of conversation through the end of the year, and then really getting down to it early 2019.
So Ginny, that's the municipal election in April, right?
That is the municipal election. Mm-hmm.
So Ginny, if somebody right now is listening to this and wants to get involved or learn more, what can they do?
We have numerous public meetings scheduled. We have another council meeting, work session in November, and I'm sure we'll have some after that. And we also have an online forum. You can ask a question, you can give feedback, answer, and that's at our city site, and we can provide the URL for that as well.
Definitely. So yeah, one thing we're hearing, this certainly is a community discussion. We want to hear from people as we move forward. It's very much going to, looks as if it'll go to the voters in the end. So definitely. With that in mind, Darin, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up for this edition?
Well, just one thing. I think, as I mentioned earlier, Jenny, I appreciate your work in this space. Ann has worked on various capital campaigns for the city for those 30 years. And I think one of the things that I hope that people who are watching this show get from those of us who are talking about this, that it's really an authentic conversation. It's about the level of service that people want to see in from their local government. And the city is not the end-all be-all. We're what we call a co-creator with so many other groups that create this place. I mean, I think about the obvious ones like the school district and the university and the various healthcare providers, and then the philanthropic groups and the non-for-profits. I mean, I heard the other day that the non-for-profit sector in Fort Collins produces about $1.2 billion worth of economic activity. So this isn't the end-all be-all. But it's a really, really important part of our ability to provide world-class municipal services, which is embedded in our vision statement. And what I love about the discussions is that it's really about trying to hear what the community wants, and that's genuine. And then ultimately, a city council, this city council will put, presumably if it's in April, will put something in front of the voters as an ask. And then the voters will speak. If they support it, what Ann has said, we'll deliver on that, and we'll report back, and we'll keep our promises. If they don't support it, then we've got work to do, and we'll do that with as much care and just in a responsible way. So I'm very hopeful for it. I think that we've stepped up to the calling. I've seen amazing things happen in Fort Collins as a result of Keep Fort Collins Great, and we're going to do our best to best resource the council. And then once the council places a ballot measure, puts a ballot measure in place, then the rest is up to our residents who speak about the advantages and disadvantages of it. But I just, Ann, I think after 30 years of work, and you were at the city before Poudre Fire Authority, you know how authentic this is and how genuine it is and how important it is. So that's what's rattling around in my mind, and to make sure that we do that again between now and April.
For those who may watch and not be as familiar, I do want to do service to Parks and Recreation, which is also highly supported out of this tax.
Yep.
And then we do have other priorities, which is less defined, but I think is important to recognize those funds have really allowed our council to be very responsive to emergent needs that citizens bring forward and trying to support.
And those services, and that's a whole nother show, those services they can be seen at fcgov.com
Yes.
slash
KFCG.
KFCG. So we've highlighted fire and police and streets today, transportation, but there is a whole nother
Correct.
area of emphasis. I appreciate you bringing that up, and very, very important as well.
We couldn't cram everyone around this table. It just
Yeah.
wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, it's too small. But definitely, fcgov.com/KFCG.
Yep.
If you go there, you can see the entire list of everything.
Yep.
And like you say, Darin, we could talk about this for multiple episodes.
Right.
Definitely an important topic. So thank you very much for your time
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us and explaining to us how KFCG makes a difference in your respective worlds. Until next time, thank you very much for joining us. And keep an eye out for more information on KFCG.